Chapter 1 Family. My name is Robinson. I am from England. I am 18 years old. My father is German. My mother is English. I have 2 brothers. I have 1 sister. We are a good family. My father is a good businessman. We have money. I have a good school. I have a good life. But I have a dream. I want to travel. I want to see the world. My father is a good man. He wants the best for me. But my dream is not his dream. He is not happy. The situation is not easy. It is morning. My father is in his room. He wants to speak with me. I go to his room. My father has some questions. My father wants to know why I want to travel. My father says, traveling is dangerous. Traveling is not comfortable. You can die. I think about it. Traveling is dangerous. It is not comfortable. I can die. But it is also very interesting. I can see new countries. I can meet new people. I think about traveling every day. Maybe my mother can help me. I speak with my mother. I tell my mother, I want to travel. I want to see the world. Please, speak with my father. Maybe with your help, I can travel. My mother loves me. But she thinks that traveling is dangerous. She thinks that my place is at home. She thinks that life in England is the best for me. 1 year later, I visit one big town. The name of this town is Hull. I meet my friend. His father has a ship. They travel to London. My friend tells me, go with me. I think about it. I am not prepared. But I can try if traveling is for me. I go to London. I am very happy. It is my first long journey. It is very interesting. The first hour is good. But then we had problems. We see a storm. The storm is big. The wind is strong. The ship goes up and down. I have fear. I think about my home. I think about my comfortable bed. The storm is finished in the morning. The weather is nice. And the evening is beautiful. Everything is quiet. One man comes to me. We speak. We speak about the storm. I speak about my fear. The man gives me a drink. I drink very much. I sleep very well at night. The next day, I forget about my home. I forget about my comfortable bed. I dream more about traveling. Chapter 2 Storm. I was so scared that I could only lie in my bed. When I looked outside the window, I saw the waves. They were very big. They were like mountains. I saw other ships. They were like toys. The waves played with the ships. I wanted to go home again. The storm was really big. Everybody asked God for help. Then, somebody saw a hole in the ship. A lot of water was inside. It was a terrible situation. Many men went down. They pumped the water out. I was so scared. I couldn't move. But then one man came to me. He told me, "Go down and help." So I went down. We pumped the water out. Then I heard a gun. It was a signal from our captain. It was a signal that we had a big problem. I thought that we had no chance. Our ship was very broken. I thought that it was our last day. We worked very hard. We tried to pump out the water. But the hole was very big. More and more water was inside the ship. The weather was better. But the ship was full of water. We needed help. We saw another ship in front of us. They sent a small boat for us. The men on the boat risked their lives for us. We all went on the boat. It wasn't possible to go back to their ship. It was already very far. 15 minutes later, our big ship went underwater. We were safe on the small boat. But I was still very scared. We saw a land. We tried to go to it. We were closer and closer. Soon we saw people on the beach. They were from a near village. They waited for us. They were really nice to us. They helped us. They gave us some money. We could go to London or Hull. I went to London. I traveled to London by land. When I was in London, I met a captain. He was very kind. He offered me to travel with him. The captain wanted to go to Africa. I thought that I could make some money there. The captain told me about the business in Africa. He told me what to buy in England. He told me what people in Africa needed. I bought things which were popular in Africa. They were cheap in England. But they were expensive in Africa. They were expensive because nobody made them in Africa. But people needed them there. Then we started the journey. The journey to Africa was successful. I returned to England with some money. I was happy. I wanted to travel more. I wanted to do more business. I also wanted to learn how to control the ship. The captain taught me the basic skills. I decided to go to Africa again. The journey started well. But soon we had big problems. The ship started to follow us. It was a pirate ship. It started in the morning. In the afternoon, the pirates came very close to us. They attacked us. They tried to connect our ships. We pushed them away. Then they attacked us again. This time, they were successful. Many men came on our ship during the second attack. They started to break everything. Some of our men were killed. Some men were injured. We couldn't win. We stopped the fight. We all became prisoners of the pirates. Chapter 3 Woman. I was young and strong. I became a slave to the captain of the pirates. I felt very sad. I was hoping the captain would take me with him when he went to sea. And when a Spanish or a Portuguese captain attacked him, I could be free. But this didn't happen because the captain left me to look after his garden every time he went to sea. One day, I met a young woman in the house. She was so beautiful. She was also a slave and she cleaned the house. I tried to speak to her, but she didn't speak my language. But I felt that she understood me. I liked her very much. She was very attractive to me. Anytime she saw me, she always smiled at me. Sometimes she touched me when she was close to me, but it was only a short moment. If the captain saw it, he could send her away. She was on my mind very often. I wanted to meet her every day. But she wasn't in the house every day. When I thought of her, I felt a nice feeling in my heart. I knew I fell in love with that woman. But our relationship was complicated. We couldn't be officially together. Slaves couldn't have relationships. It was so sad. Sometimes when the captain went fishing, he took me and a boy to help him. Sometimes he even sent me and the boy with one of his relatives fishing in a small boat. One morning when we were fishing, thick fog came and we were lost. We struggled to reach the coast the whole day and the following night, but it was only the next morning that we finally got back. After this adventure, the captain decided to use a bigger boat, the one from our English ship, and make it more comfortable. It had a cabin in the middle of it and it had good sailing equipment. One day the captain ordered me to put extra food, drinks and guns on the boat because he was expecting some important guests to join him for fishing. They also wanted to do some hunting later. However, the guests refused the offer at the last moment. Then, the captain told me, prepare the boat for fishing for the next day. This was my opportunity to run away. A lot of guns and food were on the boat. I prepared the boat for fishing as usual, but I left the guns and food on the boat. The next day I could run away. This was my plan. I thought about the young woman. I wanted to take her with me, but I didn't know how to do it. It wasn't possible to take her on the boat. I was sad as I didn't know what to do. I wanted to be free, but my heart wanted to be with her. Then the morning came. I hoped that I could see the young woman in the house. I couldn't leave without seeing her for at least a short moment. Then I saw her. She was the most beautiful woman in my life. When I looked at her, our eyes met. She knew something was wrong. Maybe she understood that was our last moment together. She looked deeply in my eyes, then she touched my hand. Her face was sad and my face was sad too. She smiled at me a little. Then she went away. This was the last moment I saw her. 1 hour later, we were ready. I and the boy went to the boat. One of the captain's relatives went with us. He was our boss for that day. Soon, we were far from the land. I pretended that I couldn't catch fish. Then our boss told us to go further from the land. He thought we could catch fish there. Chapter 4 Lion. At one moment our boss went to the front of the boat, and I quickly pushed him to the sea. He tried to swim back to us. I took one of the guns and pointed it at him. I told him to swim back to the coast if he wanted to live. After he swam away, I turned to the boy and asked him to promise that he would be faithful to me. He did as I asked. After 2 years of life as a slave, I was finally free. We tried to go as fast as possible. The wind was good. We were far away from the pirate land the next day. But I was still scared of them. I didn't want to be caught again. I was so scared that I didn't let the boy stop the boat for 5 days. On the 6th day I felt safer. We took the boat close to the land. We saw a little river. I didn't know where we were. We had to stop somewhere because we needed some fresh water. We waited until it was completely dark. We wanted to swim to the beach unseen and get water. But as soon as night came, we started hearing horrible noises from the beach. The boy asked me not to go to the beach. We remained on the boat, but we couldn't sleep. 2 hours later some animals came to wash themselves in the water. They made horrible noises. The boy was extremely scared, and me too. We were even more scared when we heard one of the animals swim to us. The boy asked me to go away. But I didn't want to go away because we needed fresh water from the river. I took one of the guns and shot at the animal. I didn't kill it, but the animal turned around and it swam back to the beach. When the other animals heard the gun, they went away. We didn't hear the noises, but we were still scared and we stayed on the boat until the morning. As soon as it was light again, we ate some bread for breakfast. Then we decided to go to the beach. We took our guns and 2 big bottles for the water, and we went to the beach. Once we were on the beach, I didn't want to lose sight of the boat, so the boy went alone a bit further inside the land to get some fresh water. He returned after some time. He was running. I thought that some animal was running after him. But I didn't see anything dangerous. He was hurrying to show me he killed an animal that looked like a chicken. We were both very glad because the meat was good and we found fresh water. I didn't know where exactly we were. I only knew we went around the coast of Africa. I hoped we met an English ship when we went around the coast. I thought we were in a land where nobody lived. We didn't see any people on the land. We only heard wild animals. One morning when we were going to get water, the boy showed me a big lion sleeping in the shade near us. Then the lion woke up. When he saw us, he started to run to us. We didn't have much time. The boy was so scared he wasn't able to shoot. I had 3 guns. The first bullet hit his leg. The second bullet hit its head. He was seriously injured. The third bullet finished the animal. We couldn't eat the meat because it wasn't good. But we wanted the skin. The skin was very big. We put it on top of the boat, and soon it was dry. Chapter 5 Ship. For the next 10 days we sailed close to the land. We stopped only to fill our bottles with fresh water. Soon we started to notice the land was inhabited. Several times we saw people on the beach who were watching us. I wanted to stop and go to them, but the boy asked me not to do it. But then, one group of these people looked very friendly. I waved to them. I tried to sign to the people that we needed food. They signed to me to come to the beach. 2 of them ran into the forest. They returned with some dry meat. We didn't want to approach the land, and they were too afraid to swim to us, so we didn't know how to reach the food. When the people saw this, they stepped back, and were soon quite far from the food. We approached the food and took it on board. Then, we weren't scared of them. They came to us. We thanked them, but we had nothing for them. At that moment, we saw 2 animals which were running down the hill. The people were scared. One animal attacked a young girl. I shot at it and I killed the animal. The second animal was scared and it ran away. The people were shocked when they heard the gun. They were also shocked when they saw the animal was dead. They were happy the girl was alive and they thanked us. They brought us more food and water. On the 11th day, we saw a long piece of land which was extending very far into the sea. There were also some islands far in the sea. I was thinking about going to the islands. Then the boy shouted, "Look! There is a ship." And really there was a ship quite far at the horizon. The boy was really scared. He thought it was a pirate ship. But I looked at the ship properly. It looked Portuguese. The ship was going away from us. Nobody on the ship saw us. So I fired a gun. They heard the gun. Then they saw us. They turned the ship and went to us. Soon we were on the Portuguese ship. They spoke Portuguese, Spanish and French. But I didn't understand them. Fortunately, there was a Scottish sailor on the ship. He came to me. I told him our story. Then all the sailors started to be very nice to us. They agreed to take me and the boy on the ship. We were both very happy. We offered our things to the captain. But he didn't want to take them. He wanted to pay for them instead. It was very nice of him. I told him he could buy our boat, which I gave him a good price for. I asked for a half of usual price. He could take the rest of the things for free. The captain agreed. The captain also wanted to train the boy as a sailor. I didn't like this idea. I thought he was too young for this job. I thought the boy also needed freedom. He didn't need to start another service. Chapter 6 Wife. But the captain said it was good for the boy. The boy wanted to work for the captain. He wanted to be a sailor. Finally, I agreed. The ship was on the way to Brazil. We arrived there after 22 days. I said goodbye to the boy and the sailors. Brazil was a new state in South America. Many people started a new life there. It was the same for me. I didn't know anybody there. Soon I met people who had sugar plantations. They became my friends. I liked Brazil very much and soon I learnt the language. I had some money from the captain and I bought a small land in Brazil. I started to produce sugar. I didn't produce much for the first 2 years, but then my plantation was growing fast. I was single, but my life was good. I was independent and my financial situation improved every month. We paid only small taxes in Brazil. The society was new. And we didn't have many rules from the government. Soon I had enough money to be able to hire a lady for cleaning my house. I asked my friends if they knew about any good woman. One of my friends said, "I have a daughter who is 18 years old. I think she could work for you. She is also a very good cook." The next day his daughter came to my house. She was friendly but a little shy. She was also a very pretty girl. We talked shortly about what I needed from her. The next day she came to my house. She cleaned the dirty floor and my furniture. She took out the rubbish. She came to my house every morning on Monday and on Thursday, and she was working for 4 hours. She cleaned the house and she also cooked for me. She gave food to my cat too, who soon started to be a little fat. I was always happy to see the girl. Sometimes we had breakfast or lunch together and we talked. Then she was sick for a week. She couldn't come to my house. I felt a strange feeling when she wasn't in my house. I really missed her. I thought, maybe, I am in love with her. 1 week later she came to my house. I was really happy to see her. I could see she was happy too. I hugged her. Then I kissed her. It was a long kiss. 2 weeks later I went to her father's house. I asked him if I could marry his daughter. He was quiet. I was waiting for his reaction. Then he said, "I agree." I was the happiest man in the world. 2 months later I married the daughter of my friend. We started to plan a family. This period of my life was great. We had big plans for our family and our plantation. We needed a bigger house and we needed more money to be able to build a bigger house. I thought about the business in Africa. I knew I could make a lot of money in Africa quickly. I spoke about Africa with my friends who started to be interested in this idea. Chapter 7 Hurricane. One day, 3 of my friends came to our house. They told me they wanted to go to Africa. They asked me if I wanted to go with them. I said, "Yes, I want to go with you." We started to prepare all the necessary things for the journey. Soon we were ready to go. I said goodbye to my wife and we started our journey. Our plan was to be back in 2 months. We left Brazil on the 1st of September 1655. Our ship was very big, but we were only 17 men. The ship was full of things for business. We had cups, glass, mirrors, knives and other products. At the beginning of our journey the weather was very good, but very hot. In 1 week, a hurricane came and it was threatening our ship for the next 12 days. After the hurricane passed, we saw we went quite far from our original journey and were instead close to the northern part of Brazil near the Orinoco River. The ship was so badly damaged we could no longer go to Africa. The captain wanted us to go back and repair the ship, but I strongly disagreed with him. We went over the maps and decided the best thing to do was to go to Barbados and repair the ship there. When we started this short trip, a second hurricane came. The next morning one of the sailors cried out, "Land," and at that moment the ship stopped in shallow water. We expected the ship to break apart at any moment because of the strong wind. So we all got into the small boat the ship carried. This was very dangerous because the 17 of us were crowded in the boat, and it had no sail. The waves were very big. The wind was extremely strong. The wind pushed us to big rocks. We knew the crash was close. Suddenly, a huge wave appeared and overturned the boat. I was covered with water and couldn't breathe. I couldn't see the others or the boat, but I saw a little beach between the rocks. Another wave carried me to the beach. I was half dead with all the water that came into my body. I was still in water, but I felt a land under my feet. I could hardly move, but I knew I had to go further onto the land. I didn't want another wave to carry me back into the sea. Before I could get to my feet, another wave came, and I was washed into the water. I couldn't breathe for a while. But then another wave threw me back on the beach. I tried to get up. I tried to go further from the sea. I was able to move 10 meters up. I was safe. But my arms and legs were very weak. I collapsed and I was lying on the beach. After some time I got up. I looked for the others. I couldn't find the other men. I was probably the only person alive. All my friends were dead. I only found 3 hats and 2 shoes on the beach. It was horrible for me. The weather was still very bad, but the waves weren't as big anymore, and I could see the ship. It was far from the land. I looked around and noticed I had almost nothing. I was wet and had no other clothes. I had nothing to eat or drink and nothing with which to defend myself if an animal attacked me. Chapter 8 Island. All I found in my pockets was a knife, and a little box with tobacco. The situation was really bad. How could I possibly survive with only these things? Before sunset I explored the place and I was looking for some fresh water. I found it in a small river. Then I made myself a weapon from a short stick to protect myself against dangerous animals. I decided to spend the night up in a tree. When I woke up the next morning, the sea was calm. I was surprised to discover that the waves moved the ship. The ship was now very close to the rocks where I almost died last night. The ship wasn't moving. I took off my clothes and I swam to the ship. I didn't see any way to get inside the big ship. So I swam around it twice. The second time I saw a rope which was hanging on one side. I used it to climb up, and when I was on board, I began to search for food and tools I could use. I was very lucky because some of the food on the ship was dry. I went into the kitchen and filled my pockets with biscuits. I was eating them while I was exploring the other cabins. I also found a bottle of rum which I took with me. There was no other boat on the ship and I needed one to carry the food and tools to the beach. That's why I took some boards and I made a raft. I discovered 3 big wooden boxes and I put them on my raft. I filled the first one with the bread, cheese and meat I found. I found some more bottles of alcohol which I also put on the raft. Then I heard something. Somebody was on the ship. Who was it? Somebody from my friends? It wasn't possible. My friends were all dead. I was a little scared. I went to the place where I heard the noises. Then I saw who it was. It was a dog. It was a dog of our captain. Now, I had a friend. I wasn't alone anymore. Then I noticed the tide was getting high again and the clothes which I left on the beach were already in water. I was still on the ship, so I looked for more clothes. When I was looking for clothes, I found a box with some tools. I also found a nice carpet next to the box. Then I looked for guns which I needed to protect myself and to hunt. I found 4 guns and 3 boxes of gunpowder. 2 of them were dry. I put all these things on my raft. The sea was calm, the tide was rising and the wind was blowing to the land. Soon I was back on the beach. I started to look for a place where I could stay. I saw a hill. I thought that from the hill I could see where I was. I took a gun and some gunpowder, and I started walking to it. When I was on the top, I saw sea around the whole place. I was on an island. I could see two small islands near. One was to the north. One was to the west. I also saw a big land to the south. It was about 100 kilometers far. I saw nothing to the east. I saw only the ocean. I couldn't see any sign of people on my island, only wild animals. Chapter 9 Tent. I saw many birds on the way back from the hill. I didn't recognize them. I killed one, but its meat wasn't good. I went back to the raft. I spent the rest of the day pulling the boxes and my other discoveries further into the land. While I was working, I was thinking that I had to go back to the ship again. I had to get everything useful which was on it, because the first storm might break it into pieces. I had to make myself a place for the night. I made a kind of a tent. I brought all the things which could be destroyed by rain or sun inside the tent. The night was close. I put some clothes on the ground. I wanted to sleep on them. I also put 4 guns around me. Then, I felt safe. I was tired from all the work. I fell asleep very soon. The next day, I left my clothes in the tent and I swam back to the ship. On board I made a second raft. I found a couple of bags with nails. There were also 7 guns, bullets for them, and some more gunpowder. I took all the clothes I could find. There were also some beds which I thought could be useful to me. I brought all this safely to the beach. From then on, I went to the ship every day. In this way I brought many useful tools and objects. The third time I went I brought as many ropes and sails as I could carry. Some days later I discovered more bread and rum, and also some sugar. All of this I brought back with me to the beach. One day, I discovered a drawer full of scissors, knives and forks. There were also some coins from Europe and Brazil there. I knew the money was worthless on the island, but still I took it. I also found playing cards with pictures of the king and the queen. I may have some fun with the cards, I thought. It was my 12th visit to the ship. The next day, I went to the ship, but the sky was getting dark. Clouds were gathering, and the wind was getting stronger. I knew it was no use making a raft when a storm was approaching. So I swam back to the beach. That night the wind was very strong, but I was safe inside my little tent. The next morning the ship was gone. I knew I had to make myself a better place where I would be more comfortable. I knew I could stay on the island for a long time. I wanted to make a nice place for me to live. I also needed to be safe. I could look for a cave. Or I could make a bigger tent. Maybe I could do both. I needed a place which was close to fresh water, which was hidden from the heat of the sun, and was easy to protect from both people and animals. Last but not least, it had to have a view of the sea, so I could easily see a ship passing nearby. I found a nice place next to a steep hill and I decided to put my tent there. The hill protected me from one side and I built a fence on all other sides. There was no door, but I was using a short ladder to go over the fence, which I then took with me inside. I brought all my stuff inside and made 2 tents, a small tent and a big one. Chapter 10 Calendar. The smaller tent was inside the bigger tent. The bigger tent protected the gunpowder and the food from rains. I lived in the smaller tent. When I finished the tents, I started digging at the bottom of the hill. I was bringing the stones and earth I got from there to the fence. In this way I made a terrace on the inner side of the fence. I wanted to use the cave at the bottom of the hill as a cellar. One day, I was still working on the cave when a storm appeared. There was lightning, followed by a loud thunder. It came to my mind that lightning could hit one of the boxes with gunpowder. It could destroy everything and even kill me. I was scared. As soon as the storm went away, I opened the big boxes with gunpowder. I started dividing the gunpowder into bags and smaller boxes, which I then hid in the rocks. I had a lot of powder, so this took me 3 days. I also went hunting every day. It was a break from the hard work and it provided me with meat. I also started to know the island and its inhabitants better. I discovered some goats and I hunted them. Then I had enough meat. Some days I was very sad. I thought about my wife. I missed her a lot. I thought about my friends in Brazil. I thought about my parents. I felt living on this island alone was meaningless. I often walked along the beach and I regretted my choice to travel by sea. I knew traveling by sea could change your life completely. It could be great, but it could be horrible too. I knew my friends from the ship were dead. It was horrible. On the other hand, I was alive. And I was grateful for that. I was also lucky to have all the tools, food, clothes and guns from the ship. Without them I could hardly survive a week. I decided to make a big cross. I put it on the beach. It was near the place of my arrival to the island. I wrote on it the date of my arrival. It was the 30th of September, 1659. I wanted to keep information about time. The cross was my calendar. I made a small cut in the cross every day. The 7th cut was longer. It marked the end of the week. The beginning of each month was also a longer cut. One day, when I was thinking about my situation, I realized I had a lot of negative thoughts. It wasn't good. I decided to do something about it. I made a list of all good and bad things that happened to me. I was alone on this island and I had little hope of ever going back to civilization. On the other hand, I was saved and I didn't die in the storm which killed my friends. I had food to eat. I didn't have a lot of clothes, but the weather was such that I hardly needed any. I had a dog. He understood some words. He understood when I said, "Sit down. Come here. Bring it. Don't do it. Don't jump. Let's eat. Let's run." This list helped me realize that all bad things come with something good in them. I try to concentrate on positive things only. I continued to make my place better and better. I made the cave bigger. More space in the cave helped me keep all my things organized. Chapter 11 Book. Then I started to make some furniture. I needed a chair and a table very much. I used the boards from my rafts and the ship to make them. Next, I made shelves inside the cave. I arranged my tools on them. My clothes and guns were hanging there as well. I was very pleased with my work. The cave was comfortable, everything was in order. And I could easily find whatever I needed. I decided to write a book. I wanted to describe my daily activities in it. It did me good to put my thoughts to paper. I started by writing down my experiences from the very first day on the island. When I got to the present, I continued describing interesting or important events in my life on the island. I decided to make a schedule to organize my time better. Every morning I walked for a few hours. Then I worked until noon. I had lunch and I slept after lunch for 2 hours. Then I continued working until the evening. I was expanding my cave with the tools I had. I needed to make the cave big enough as it was going to be my kitchen, living room, bedroom and cellar all at once. When I almost finished my cave, a great quantity of earth fell down from one side. I was scared because this could have killed me if I was in the cave at that time. Afterwards I had a lot of work to clean the cave. The next week I spent putting long boards on the sides and also on the ceiling of the cave. I wanted to avoid such disaster from happening again. Little by little I began arranging the furniture in my new home. The next 3 days the weather was bad. It was raining day and night, but it was still warm, so I continued with my tasks inside. It was never cold on the island. It was good for me. At the end of December I killed a goat. I also hurt another one. Its leg was broken, so I took the goat home on a string and took care of it. After 2 weeks the goat wasn't scared. This event made me consider keeping animals, so I could provide food for myself when the gunpowder was finished. I explored the island and I found more goats in the valleys in the center of the island. The animals were very shy, which made it difficult to approach them. I wanted to try to domesticate some goats. I only needed an opportunity to do it. I had a plan. I returned with my dog the next day. He was my hunting partner. I told my dog, "Sit down. Wait. Don't move." Then I went around the goats, but in a big distance. When the goats were between me and my dog, I hid behind a tree. Then I shouted at my dog, "Come here." He started to run to me and the goats too. Chapter 12 Corn. Then I started to make some furniture. I needed a chair and a table very much. I used the boards from my rafts and the ship to make them. Next, I made shelves inside the cave. I arranged my tools on them. My clothes and guns were hanging there as well. I was very pleased with my work. The cave was comfortable, everything was in order and I could easily find whatever I needed. I decided to write a book. I wanted to describe my daily activities in it. It did me good to put my thoughts to paper. I started by writing down my experiences from the very first day on the island. When I got to the present, I continued describing interesting or important events in my life on the island. I decided to make a schedule to organize my time better. Every morning I walked for a few hours. Then I worked until noon. I had lunch and I slept after lunch for 2 hours. Then I continued working until the evening. I was expanding my cave with the tools I had. I needed to make the cave big enough as it was going to be my kitchen, living room, bedroom, and cellar all at once. When I almost finished my cave, a great quantity of earth fell down from one side. I was scared because this could have killed me if I was in the cave at that time. Afterwards I had a lot of work to clean the cave. The next week I spent putting long boards on the sides, and also on the ceiling of the cave. I wanted to avoid such disaster from happening again. Little by little I began arranging the furniture in my new home. The next 3 days the weather was bad. It was raining day and night, but it was still warm, so I continued with my tasks inside. It was never cold on the island. It was good for me. At the end of December I killed a goat. I also hurt another one. Its leg was broken, so I took the goat home on a string and took care of it. After 2 weeks the goat wasn't scared. This event made me consider keeping animals, so I could provide food for myself when the gunpowder was finished. I explored the island and I found more goats in the valleys in the center of the island. The animals were very shy, which made it difficult to approach them. I wanted to try to domesticate some goats. I only needed an opportunity to do it. I had a plan. I returned with my dog the next day. He was my hunting partner. I told my dog, "Sit down. Wait. Don't move." Then I went around the goats, but in a big distance. When the goats were between me and my dog, I hid behind a tree. Then I shouted at my dog, "Come here." He started to run to me and the goats too. Chapter 13 Dream. One of my dreams was really crazy. I was in a pub which was on my island. I wanted to drink some rum, but the waitress was extremely lazy. She sat at the bar and she did nothing. I didn't like her attitude. I was angry, but I waited. Then my wife came to the pub. She gave me a piece of paper with some text. It was a message from her father. He wrote, "Come home. You should work on the plantations." But I didn't want to go home. I went to the kitchen in the pub. There was my mother in the kitchen who was preparing some steaks. And she was also cooking soup. I tasted the soup, which was fantastic. Then 2 Englishmen came to the pub. They wanted to sell me gunpowder. One man looked like a gentleman, but the second man was horrible. I told the horrible man, "I am sorry, I don't need your gunpowder. I have a lot of gunpowder in my camp." "What did you say?" said the horrible man. "Our gunpowder isn't good for you. This is the main reason why we are here. We've traveled from London. You have to buy our gunpowder." I said, "Thank you, I don't want your gunpowder." The man was really angry. Our conversation was getting worse and worse. He said some horrible things about me. I said some horrible things about him. The conversation got to a point when he wanted to kill me. When he took his gun, I started to run away. He shot at me. At that moment, I woke up. 1 week later, I felt better, but I still needed to relax. I needed to sleep a lot. In August, I was okay again. I still felt a little weak though. I knew I needed to do some physical exercise. The next 10 days I walked around the island. This exercise made me feel better. When I felt strong again, I decided to explore the whole island. I found a new valley where I saw some tobacco plants among other unknown ones. The next day I found melons and grapes. I dried the grapes and I had raisins. There were also apple, orange, and lemon trees on the island which I didn't notice before. I made a pile of the fruits that I gathered and I returned to my cave to get a bag for them. When I returned I found the fruits destroyed. Some were eaten, some were stepped upon. I concluded from this that there are some wild animals around. Still, I liked that fruit valley and I began thinking about moving there. Then I remembered that the beach was far away from that valley and I wouldn't see if any ship passed by. Chapter 14 House. Instead of moving to the fruit valley, I decided to build another house there, which I would visit from time to time. I made a small house, and then I surrounded it with a double fence. The house was protected like a castle. Again, I used a ladder to go in and out. But I had also stairs on the inside of the fence. I used stairs on the inside and I used ladder on the outside. This activity took me the whole of August and the beginning of September. But I enjoyed it a lot. The fruit valley gave me so much energy. I felt so healthy and strong there. Sometimes when I was in the valley at night, I watched the moon and the stars. I thought about my wife. I thought about my family in England. I knew they could see the same moon, they could see the same stars, but we couldn't be together. I thought about my family very often. I wished the best for them. I also thought about all the people who could see the moon. I imagined the places where they lived. I felt connected with them. Sometimes I felt connected with the whole universe. I also thought about God. I had questions for God. I asked him, why am I on this island? What is the reason for it? Why am I still alive when my friends are dead? I didn't have answers to many of these questions, but I trusted God. I believed He knew what He was doing. Then the rainy season started, which continued until the middle of October. This was my first year on the island. After the rains ended, I returned to my valley house to find the branches in the fence all green, with new leaves growing all over them. This wasn't only beautiful but also useful to me because soon my house was covered entirely and was hardly visible. The leaves kept shadow over it and it was very pleasant to stay in there during the dry season. I liked it so much that I decided to make a fence from the same branches around my first house as well. With the end of the rainy season, I thought it was the right time to put my seeds into the ground. I was cautious, so I only used a half of the seeds. This was a good idea because none of these seeds came up. I put the rest of the seeds in the ground just before the next rainy season and they came up all right. Now, I had a little farm on the island. This experience made me notice that there were 2 rainy and 2 dry seasons on the island. With this in mind, I could now plan when to put seeds into the ground. Chapter 15 Basket. Soon I realized I needed baskets. With baskets I could carry more food when I made my trips around the island. I could also carry more fruit from the fruit valley. I cut branches from the same tree which I used for both my fences. After drying these branches, I used them to make baskets. When I finished that, I decided to take another longer trip around the island. After passing the fruit valley, I found pleasant grass fields. They were very flat. They had a lot of flowers. They smelled so good. A lot of insects were flying around these flowers. I could see some big butterflies. Their wings were 10 centimeters wide. There were small trees around these fields. I found nuts on these trees. These nuts were different from nuts in England. They had a different shape. They were also sweeter than nuts in England. I also discovered that there were many parrots, rabbits and cats at this side of the island. I even caught one parrot and took it with me. There were also many turtles and other birds there. This part of the island was more pleasant and there was more food, but I didn't want to move. On the way back, my dog captured a young kid which I saved and took with me. I wanted to keep goats very much and now I was offered another chance. I left the kid in the valley house until I prepared a space for it in my first home. I was so tired from the trip that on my return I relaxed the whole day. I made a cage for the parrot and brought home the kid, which started to calm down. I made a map of the whole island. I put these newly discovered places on the map. The time passed so quickly and soon it was September again. This was my second year on the island. I was no longer as sad and desperate as I was immediately after the arrival. I accepted my destiny and I was grateful for being well and alive. I still kept my daily schedule. I was hunting in the morning, cooking at lunchtime, relaxing in the afternoon when it was the hottest, and working in the evening. I also taught the parrot to say his name. His name was Pole. In the months of November and December I was busy with my fields. The wild goats and rabbits were eating the little plants. I risked losing all of it. So I quickly made a fence around the place where I put the seeds in the ground. I put my dog inside the fence to guard my corn at night. Soon the plants were tall. But then another danger appeared. Birds of all kinds started eating the seeds. I shot some and kept an eye on my corn until the rest of the birds were gone. Chapter 16 Bread. At the end of December I had my first corn. It wasn't a lot. I didn't want to eat the corn, so I decided to leave it all for seeds. My goal was to put the seeds in the ground again and have more corn later. Meanwhile I began preparing the tools I would need in a year's time. I realized I needed pots to keep the corn. I looked for clay around the island. I found some and after 2 months of experiments I succeeded in making 2 large pots. To protect them better I put them in baskets and placed dry grass between the baskets and the pots. I continued making small pots and plates. I also made long but not very high pots. I put sea water in these pots. When the water was gone, I had salt. One day, quite by accident, I found a broken piece of one of my pots in the fire. The heat made it as hard as stone and it was very red too. This gave me a good idea. I took one pot and made a fire around it. The pot was very hard after a few hours. I was happy with the result. I also felt a need for some other tools. For example, I needed a tool to make flour from seeds. I took a big piece of hardwood for that. I made a hole in the wood. Then I took another piece of hardwood and I broke the seeds in this hole with the wood. The flour stayed on the bottom of the hole. I thought, I will need something to bake bread. I had an idea. I mixed the flour with water. Then I took 2 stones. I put them near the fire. When they were very hot, I put the bread between them. This was how I made my first bread on the island. It was during my 3rd year on the island. The bread wasn't perfect, but I liked it a lot. It was my first bread after a long time. I was thinking whether I could make a canoe out of some large tree. I found one big tree. I cut it and I started to make a hole in it. One day, when I was working on the canoe, I realized I didn't know how to move it from the forest to the beach. I was stupid. It took me many days to make the canoe. And the thought of how I was going to put it in water never came to my mind. I tried everything to move the canoe. I even considered digging a channel from the beach to where the canoe stayed, but it was all useless. There was a hill in between. And it would have taken me a long time to dig the channel through the hill. Eventually I gave up on the canoe. Many days of work were lost. I couldn't believe that I made such a mistake. I had to plan my work better next time. Chapter 17 Canoe. During my 4th year on the island, my clothes were already very old. Instead, I began using the skins of the animals I killed. I made myself a cap and some other clothes entirely out of those skins. They kept me cool in the heat and protected me from the heavy rain. But the clothes weren't enough. I also needed an umbrella for the same purposes. It took me a while, but I succeeded in making one. I was quite happy with my life on the island. I had everything what I needed for my life on the island. I continued living like that for the next 5 years. I kept on growing my corn. I continued drying grapes to make raisins. All my activities remained the same. During this time I decided to make a new canoe. It was smaller and easier to move. I wanted to travel around the island in it. When the canoe was finished, I put food, water, and tools in it. I was ready for the trip. I wanted to test if I could go around the island in my canoe. It was the 6th of June on the 6th year of my stay on the island that I started this trip. I faced danger as soon as I started my journey. I had to go around some rocks in the sea. When I wanted to go back to the coast, I realized there was a strong current. The current was taking me away from the island. The situation was horrible. I was scared. I thought, I will die in the open sea. I didn't have enough food and water for a long journey. I fought very hard against the current for 2 hours. Finally I managed to get close to my island. I could continue my trip around the island. Now I knew I was stronger than the currents around the island. It made me feel good. Soon, I found a small river which went further inside the island. But I got nowhere because soon the river was very narrow. Stones blocked the way. I couldn't continue. I got off my canoe. I went to explore this part of the island. It wasn't far from the part of the island which I knew. I even found a way to my house in the valley. I was so tired from the trip that I fell asleep. I was woken up by a voice. The voice was saying my name, Robinson, where are you? Robinson, where are you? I was scared at first, but then I saw my parrot pole on top of the hedge. He learned the phrases I repeated to myself so many times. Now he was saying them with the same intonation I used. I was surprised to find the parrot here, because I left it in my house. Still, I was happy to hear someone talk to me. I left the canoe there and returned home with the parrot. I didn't take such long trips for a year, and I was staying in my house most of the time. I kept on making wooden tools and clay pots. I even found a way to make pots with a wheel, which made my work much lighter. I also figured out how to make a tobacco pipe, which I missed a lot ever since I came to this island. Chapter 18 Foot. One day, I also noticed I was running out of the gunpowder. I was worried I wouldn't be able to kill any more goats once it was gone. The kid I once caught was old. It was too late to try to find a male for her. I wanted meat, but I didn't have the heart to kill her. One day, she died a natural death. It was 11 years since I first came to this island. And all this time I was using gunpowder to provide myself with meat. Now I thought of finding some other way to supply myself with food. I decided to make some trap. I didn't succeed at first, but eventually I caught 3 young goats. They were 1 male and 2 females. I took them home with me. I had to make a fence for them, because I feared they might run away with the wild ones once they were adult. It took me 3 months, but I made a nice fence around a suitable space, where there was a lot of grass and water for them. After some time, the young goats became very calm and they were eating out of my hand. In 2 years I had 12 goats. And in 3 years' time I had more than 20 goats. This way I had a lot of milk and meat. I experimented several times and at last I managed to make cheese and butter. My table was full now and I was surrounded by animals. I had my old dog, cats, goats and Pole, my parrot. The only thing I still missed was someone to talk to. One day I set out to reach that part of the island where the strong current was. On the way there I thought to myself how ridiculous I would have appeared if some Englishman saw me. I had a big hat, a short jacket and short trousers all made out of goatskin. I didn't have socks or shoes, but I put some goatskin around my feet. I had 2 belts, one for the gun and knife, and one for the gunpowder. On my back I had a basket. I also carried a gun on my shoulder and an umbrella made out of goatskin above my head. My beard was pretty long. I realized I was looking very unusual from what I used to look years ago. One day, about lunchtime, I was walking on the beach going to check on my canoe, when I came across something surprising. I saw the mark of a human footprint on the sand. I looked around but I couldn't see anyone. I was scared. I hurried back to my home. I was so scared I couldn't sleep that night. Why was there no canoe? Why were there no more footprints? I thought that maybe it was the footprint of one of the people who probably inhabited the islands around. I began to worry whether they saw my canoe and were now preparing to attack me. Then I convinced myself that maybe I saw the mark of my own foot and I was a fool to get scared by it. This realization made me feel better. I took my courage and I went to see the footprint again. Chapter 19 Cannibals. When I approached the footprint, I saw that the footprint was much bigger than the size of my foot. It was impossible that the footprint was mine. I got scared again. That night I considered letting all my animals into the wild, destroying my fields and my summer house so that no mark of human habitation was left on the island. I was so afraid I couldn't fall asleep the whole night. In the morning I finally fell asleep for a short time. When I woke up my head was clear. Now it didn't seem that strange that people lived on the islands around. Maybe they came to my island time to time, or now the wind carried them this way for the first time. I remembered that for the 15 years I lived on the island I didn't meet any human being, or discovered any signs of a settlement here. This calmed me down. Still, I wanted to be safe. I made another wall around my house and left holes through which I could easily fire several guns if attacked. Now I had such a strongly protected house surrounded with walls and thick trees that no one could come near me. I was also worried about my goats. I divided the animals and built a smaller fence in another part of the island. It took me lots of time and effort, but in the end my animals were safe from any unexpected attack. It was the 16th year of my life on the island when something very sad happened. My dog died. I was crying for 3 days. It was my worst day on the island. I went to my goats and I told them how sad I was. They didn't understand my words, but I felt they understood me. They felt my emotions. They were unusually calm and quiet. It was now 2 years after the footprint on the beach. One day as I was walking towards the beach, I thought I saw a canoe in the distance. I couldn't be sure, so I just continued my walk. It was then that I came across something terrifying. The whole beach was covered with human remains. Skulls, hands and feet were all over the place. And there was a black circle after a fire. I was angry and scared at the same time. They were here again, I thought. I was sick and threw up at the horrible sight. I went back to my house. And again I considered what to do. I decided to give up going out at sea with my canoe because the cannibals could capture me. I also stopped firing guns, because I feared being discovered by the sound. Every time I went out of my house I carried guns to protect myself in the case of a sudden attack. Soon I started thinking how I could kill some of the cannibals and save their victims if I could. If that wasn't possible, at least I could frighten them so they would never come here again. I began looking at that side of the island where I first saw the human footprint. I wanted to find a hiding place for myself and prepare it for the attack. Then I changed my mind and thought it was unreasonable to fight them because they didn't do any harm to me. Chapter 20 Cave. Eventually, I gave up the preparations altogether and decided to act only if they attacked me first. For a whole year I was hiding my activities as well as I could. I hid my canoe. I kept myself occupied with my animals and fields, but I was very careful. I was afraid to make loud noises and I was worried every time I made a fire. But I needed fire because I needed to cook. So when I made a fire, I tried to make as little smoke as possible. Smoke could go very high and it could be seen from a distance. Once when I was cutting some branches in the forest, I discovered a small cave. I went inside it, but as soon as my eyes were okay with the dark, I noticed two bright eyes looking at me. I jumped outside. I was scared to death. I waited but nothing happened. I went slowly to the beginning of the cave and I listened. I heard something. It sounded as if there was somebody injured inside. I took my gun and I entered the cave slowly. When my eyes could see again, I discovered an old goat. It was dying in the cave. I returned to the cave the next day to find out that the goat was dead. I explored the place and found it very safe. It would make a great hiding place near the beach. That's why I brought some of my guns and some gunpowder there. 23 years passed since I first stepped on this island. Now I was living comfortably and had many animals to keep me company. Pole was repeating my name very pleasantly. I had 2 more parrots and I taught all of them to pronounce my name. It was the last month of my 23rd year on the island when, as I was walking to my fields early one morning, I saw fire on the beach. I immediately returned to my house and loaded all guns. I took my telescope and went close to the beach. I hid myself and observed them. I saw 9 naked people who came in 2 canoes. It seemed that they were waiting for the high tide to leave the island. As soon as they left, I went to the beach. It was full of blood and bones again. This made me sick and angry and I decided to kill as many of them as I could the next time I saw them. They didn't return for a long time. Meanwhile, something else happened that disturbed my routine. One evening I was disturbed out of my ordinary activities by the sound of a gun at sea. I got out of my house and I saw a flash coming from the sea. A second shot followed. I thought it was coming from some ship in danger asking for help. I took all the dry wood I could find around and ran to the beach where I made a big fire. They probably saw the fire because they fired again. I thought, I will speak to somebody tonight. This is great. I kept the fire until midnight, but there was no sign of them. It was strange. It was something what my brain couldn't understand. Maybe in the morning I will know more, I thought.